We're also going to talk about loose parts, and we're going to talk about the whole idea of the playground, kind of how to incorporate that into the outdoor classroom and outdoor learning. So, let's talk about play. Is play important? How many of you believe that play is important? Raise your hands. Okay, I believe that's almost everybody in here. Okay? Research supports that child-initiated play integrates and reflects growth and development in all developmental domains. Okay? So play affects every developmental part of that child. Cognitive, physical, emotional, social. Their whole well-being is related to play, especially in the early childhood years. So we know there's a consensus that play is important for all children. It's vital. It's how they become adults. So, let's talk about play and risk. Play embodies risk. Okay? The outcome of play is always unknown and uncertain. That's what makes it play. Growth takes place only when we take risk and face challenges. Only when we challenge ourselves above and beyond what we're normally able to do we have growth. There's challenge, there's risk involved in it. The first time you got up and, how many of you ever spoken in public? Okay? Were you nervous the first time? Yes. Were you worried? Did you have butterflies? Was there a fear? You're going to mess up. I'm not going to pronounce something. I'm going to stutter. Blah, blah, blah. All those things are related to, but the fact that you went up there, you conquered your fears, you had the opportunity to fail, but you went above that and you accomplished your ability to speak in front of other people. That is related to risk and challenge, and play is related to that. Okay? So let's learn about the difference between being at risk and taking a risk. Okay? And this is kind of related to what you talked about with the table. Okay? So, being at risk is a hazard. Taking a risk is a challenge. What you see over here is a bolt that was not installed correctly on a bridge or on a playground. Okay? Now, that is a hazard. And I'll explain kind of the detail of that in the next slide. This is a risk, a child walking across a lawn. That's a challenge. Okay? There are two different things. Are there potentials for injury for both of these? Yes. But they're on different levels. Defining a risk. Challenge is a test of one's own ability in demanding but stimulating undertaking. How many of you guys ever been rock climbing? You guys ever tried climbing rocks? Is that risky? Can you get injured? But you're making a conscious decision that you want to do that. Okay? How many of you guys cook? How many of you guys use a knife? Okay? Is there potential for injury in that? But you're making a conscious decision to do that. So that is a risk and a challenge. Okay? Let me just kind of show you what a hazard is. A hazard is something that is unknown. Something that someone is not able to make a conscious decision about that outcome. Okay? A child did not know that that bolt was installed incorrectly. That's our job as adults to evaluate the situation. So therefore, this is a hazard because there's no conscious effort to make a determination that the child wants to fall or wants to injure themselves. Okay? So the value of challenge. It demands that we summon up our skills. Okay? It provides the opportunity for growth. And if we don't have challenge and take risk or enter into the unknown, we are bored. Think about it. If there's no challenge in our lives, we're bored. How many of you guys have done Sudoku or crossword puzzles? Okay? What's the fun of it? Trying to figure out the sequence, trying to figure out the words. If you got a Sudoku and it was all filled out, let's just say it had gray numbers, you know, so you had to outline it and put it in. Would that be boring? Yeah, because you already know the outcome of it. So that's the whole idea, is that you have to, it relates to boredom. It relates to our ability to adjust to the world around us, our environment. Okay? Without play and its attendant risk, we are cheating childhood. If we eliminate all risk and all challenge from children's lives, we eliminate the opportunity for growth. We are creating what is called a generation of children that have no experiences. Never experienced climbing a tree, never experienced climbing a rock, never went down to a stream, never went fishing, never had a pocket knife. All these things that we experience as children, they are not experiencing. Think about it. Think about all the things you did as a child. Think about all the things that you had the potential of getting injured on. Riding a bike, climbing a tree, building a go-kart, building a fort, digging a hole. All these things are related to that experience. Many of us, especially if you grow up in a lower income family, learn to cook at a very young age. Because many times the adults were out working, and therefore the older child was responsible for taking care of the younger children. And many times that related to cooking. Okay? But you would be amazed at how many children today have no idea about kitchen safety or the idea of cooking or things like that, because they are not taught that. They don't experience those things. Their idea of cooking is going to McDonald's. I mean, think about it. Because of the lifestyle that we lead, many children are exposed to that whole fast food generation because that's normality to them. They don't have the life skills when they later on become adults. Ask yourself, which child is more competent as an adult? Which child would grow up to be a healthy adult? Would it be the child that's coddled, that's never allowed to experience any injury or risk? Or is it the child that may have a skinned knee, may have a broken arm, but he's experienced those things? Think about the very first time that you rode a bike, okay? And the very first time you rode your bike, you're pedaling on the bicycle and you're going across the street and you fall because they've taken the training wheels off, okay? And think about when you fell down, if your parent, your mom or dad or whoever ran up and said, "Oh my God, you could have broken your leg, you could have got a brain trauma injury and a concussion, you're never riding this bike again, let me put it up in the balcony, in the garage, and you'll never use it again." Well, you would have never learned motor skills, fine and gross motor skills. You would have never, coordination, balance, all these things are related to that potential for injury. But think about that's what we do with children many times. We don't allow them to experience those things because we're so afraid of them getting injured, or they're getting hurt, or the liability behind it, or we're over-coddling them. Allowing children to test their limits in unstructured play develops their imagination, dexterity, physical, cognitive, and emotional strength. This is from the American Association of Pediatrics. Okay? So all of these are important to helping a child develop properly throughout their life. Scrapes and bruises are how children learn their limits and need to take personal responsibility. Okay? This is always a very controversial statement when I make these, especially when I talk about playground and safety and things like that. It's okay to get injured. Life is not injury-free. Okay? Many times, how many of you guys have burned yourself cooking? How many of you guys have cut yourself? How many of you guys have scraped your leg or hurt yourself in that respect? How many of you guys have you bumped your elbow or your knee or things like that? Or you've fallen down? All those are related to our ability to overcome challenges, builds us into a stronger person. So those things are important. Now, do we want a child permanently disabled? Do we want a serious injury? Do we want a child to die? No. There's a difference between injuries and there's a difference between serious debilitating injuries. Those are two different things. I'm not talking about allowing a children to climb on top of a roof. Okay, and I'm not talking about allowing a children to climb 50 feet up into a tree. Okay? But I am allowing that there has to be an understanding that there is a potential for a slight injury. And that's okay. We injured ourselves. We got up, we brushed ourselves up, and we learned from that experience. Stop and think. All movement entails risk. When you get up, when you stand up from your chair, when you sit down, when you walk, when you jump, when you take a shower, all those things are related to movement, and all those have the potential for injury. So risk is an essential part of life. If you don't have risk, you don't have life. Now, if we sit still, there's also consequences. There's child obesity consequences. There's health consequences. There's experience consequences. There's social, emotional consequences from leading a sedentary lifestyle and not experiencing risk or challenge. And that's what many children are experiencing today. So, we're going to talk now about risk and action. Okay? We're going to talk about outdoor environments that support risk. Because this is important. This is help you understand about how do you configure your environment to accomplish risk and challenge.